begin. There we go. Okay, so on Friday, we had introduced ourselves to the first of our subsistence strategies, hunting and gathering, right? It's an important one because it's kind of our default setting, if you will. And so all of us now live in a world of mechanized agriculture, right? We go to the store and we buy our food from the grocery store. Some of it's very packaged, some of it's very processed, but that's kind of a weird way for humans to get our food, because for really most of our history, for 94% of our history, we've been hunting and gathering, right? And so were our bipedal primate ancestors, right? So we're spending a little more time on it. I showed you there's kind of two broad types of hunter-gatherers, simple ones and complex ones. Doesn't mean that they're less or more intelligent. Doesn't mean that their culture is necessarily more or less complex. It just means their subsistence strategy is a little more complicated, a little more sophisticated, right? And so we said that there was differences in group size and how they moved around and whether they stored their food or whether they just kind of collected whatever was around, whether they used more complicated technologies or more simple ones, whether they had differences in social status or whether they really didn't have any at all. We talked about those two different types, and then we kind of went on to say that really very few people hunt and gather today, right? That's the way that all humans used to get their food thousands and hundreds of thousands of years ago, but now almost nobody does it. And in fact, foragers have kind of been pushed to the edges of the map, right, by people with different subsistence strategies, by people who farm, right, or who keep herds of animals. And I wanted to answer this question of why, okay? So the question we're going to answer today, or try to answer today, is why do people switch from hunting and gathering to farming, okay? After 340,000 years of hunting and gathering, why switch, right? It seemed to be working for us. We survived for that long, and we out-survived all of our other bipedal cousins, right? Like Homo neanderthalensis and Homo erectus and Homo heidelbergensis and a few others. We out-survived all of those. Why don't we just keep going, right? But before we get to that, I was talking a little bit about critical thinking, right? And I said that it's an incredibly important skill to have nowadays, right? Once upon a time, we just needed to have knowledge, right? That's all we needed to do. But now knowledge is everywhere, right? I have pretty much everything that humanity has ever known accessible in this little thing in my hand, which is pretty incredible. But the question is, what can we do with all that information, right? Can we collect the information we need? Can we build it into something that makes sense? Can we convince other people? And if other people are trying to convince us of things, do we know how to assess those beliefs? Can we see if we should believe something or not? Because again, we're in a point of history where there are lots of people out there who will lie to you and to me, not just you. They'll lie to me too, right? They'll try to tell me that things are a certain way, right? They'll try to tell me a story, or they'll try to make me believe something that is untrue or based on faulty data, right? Something that serves their purpose. And we need the tools to be able to evaluate that, because if we can't tell the difference between good beliefs and bad beliefs, if we can't evaluate people's arguments, then we're in trouble, right? Because people will be able to convince us of all kinds of things that might help them, but might hurt us, right? And so this is the ground level of this skill. If you take a philosophy course, you'll hear a lot more about this. But this is the ground level of this, and it's focusing on arguments, right? And so I said an argument is a collection of statements that tries to get you to believe something, okay? And we can use these arguments, again, to try to convince other people, but we can also we can also evaluate an argument to see if we should believe it ourselves. Do you remember the argument that I suggested on Friday? Do you remember my example argument? What was my example? What was the conclusion of my example argument?
You were talking about the cats.
Talking about cats?
And the conclusion was that you talked about like less points.
Yeah.
Most of the points were not included in your argument.
Yeah.
That people were not agreeing with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, your points were logical and they are in favor to your argument, but still you left many of the points that are considerable.
Yeah.
While choosing cat as a pet.
Good. So that is what we did, right? I constructed an argument, we evaluated it, and then we kind of thought about, well, is there reasons why you might reject my argument anyway, right? And so if you remember, my argument was, I think cats make the best pets, right? And I said that they make the best pets because they're very lovable and loving and caring. Maybe not caring, loving. They don't care very much. They're very loving. They're very inexpensive to keep, and you don't have to take them out all the time, right? They can go in their litter boxes, right? And we evaluated that argument by looking at whether those premises were logical support for the conclusion, right? Are those reasons why someone might choose a cat as a pet? And I think we agreed that they were, for the most part. And then the second part is, are those premises true? And I think for the most part we agreed that they probably were, right? Cats are loving. Well, sometimes it depends on the cat and the person, right? But maybe in general it's true. Cats are reasonably inexpensive to feed. And yeah, they use their litter box. You don't have to take them out. And so I constructed this argument that was a logical one, right? And I gave you an example of some premises that weren't really good for the argument, right? The idea that, or the premise that cats were worshipped as gods in ancient Egypt. True, but probably not a reason why someone would choose a cat, right? Maybe the odd strange person who was into that, but most people wouldn't, right? And so similarly, yes, you should choose a cat because having one around will heal all of your ailments magically. That would be a great reason to have a cat, but it's not true, right? So we need arguments that have premises that are true and that actually support our conclusion, right? But again, we said my argument didn't really cover everything, right? We said that there was allergies. Some people just aren't cat people. They don't really like them. Some people maybe feel they're not responsible enough. They might live in a building that doesn't allow pets. And so there's other things I didn't talk about that might, people might challenge, right? They say, this is a logical argument, Mike, but I'm still not going to get a cat because I'm allergic or something like that. But that's okay, right? So let's look at a few examples. And if you've been in my class before, like Maya or Kine, I'm sorry if you remember these from before. I do recycle a little bit, but they still, an argument is an argument, right? The first one here, what I'm looking for is, these are all very simple arguments, okay? What's the conclusion and what's a premise or premises, okay? So because assault rifles have no peaceful civilian use, assault rifles are the because they have no peaceful civilian use, the Canadian government should ban assault rifles. Now, what are we being asked to believe here?
So they have banned?
That they should be banned? Yeah, we're being asked to believe that the Canadian government should ban these things. Always ask yourself the question, why should I believe that?
Because it has no peaceful civilian.
Yeah, because it has no peaceful civilian use. Good. This is a very simple argument, right? You could turn this into a whole big thing, but for our purposes, exactly, right? That's the conclusion, and that's the premise. Let's try this one. So the Globe and Mail's report on business, if you don't know, the Globe and Mail is like a Canadian national newspaper. It's a legit one. The Globe and Mail's report on business says that people should invest heavily in stocks. Therefore, investing in stocks is a smart move. What is the conclusion here? What are we being asked to believe?
Like investing in stocks is a smart move.
Investing in stocks is a smart move, right? Why should we believe that?
Because it is heavily stock. But it didn't give the reason.
What's that?
It didn't give the reason specific.
Didn't give a reason. Okay. What do others think?
Maybe it is published in one of the newspapers, that's why we should believe it.
Okay. So investing in stocks is a smart move. Why should we believe that? Well, because the Globe and Mail's report on business says that we should do that, right? Now that probably feels a little weak to you, right? It doesn't feel like a good argument because basically this is why should we do it? Well, because they said so. Not the strongest argument, right? But there is something missing here, right? And it's kind of an implication, right? Or an implied premise. The implication here is that the Globe and Mail knows what they're talking about, okay? And maybe you don't know that, maybe I don't know that. And so it might make a stronger argument. Hey, it might make a stronger argument if I said something like, the Globe and Mail's report on business is generally seen as a financial authority in Canada, right? So the Globe and Mail really knows what they're talking about. So when the Globe and Mail says that you should do this, doing that is a smart move because they really know what they're talking about. So it's kind of missing a piece, right? But you're very right. We're being asked to believe that investing in stocks is a smart thing to do. Why should we believe that? Well, because the Globe and Mail report on business says that you should do it, and I'm making this up, I'm adding it in, and they're generally seen as a financial authority. They really know what they're talking about. Okay? So that one's a little tricky because it's kind of missing something that would really make it stronger.
So we don't know about the advantages and disadvantages to invest in stocks.
Say that one more time.
So we don't know about that. If we invest in the stocks, we don't know about the advantages. Did we get any benefit from it?
Yeah. Well, exactly, right? So a really good argument might be that you should invest in stocks, and you should ask, well, why should I do that? Well, because here are the ways that it will benefit you, right? Here's why stocks are better than bonds, right? Here's why investing in stocks is a smarter move for you than mutual funds, right? So there's a complicated argument to be made there and a much better one. This one's not very good.
So there is no briefing.
But there's no
Brief. They didn't give the description or any proof.
Yeah.
To prove that.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you'll find is that basically what these are is, let me show you here. Basically any argument you have, unless it's like really simple, is that you have one, oh geez, that doesn't work. You have one thing that people are asking you to believe, right? And then you have, conclusion, premise, right? And so each premise can kind of be a little argument of its own, right? So if this one is the Globe and Mail is a financial authority, well, why are they? Well, because they've, been writing about finances in Canada for 100 years, because it's all written by people who have financial degrees and positions in banks because of this. And so you can kind of, it almost becomes like a Christmas tree, right? You can build out your things as far as you want them to. You can make your argument a single sentence. It's not a very good one, but you can make an argument a single sentence. Or you can make your argument an entire book, right? And that's what happens with a book, right? The book builds out each premise, right? Each premise becomes a chapter. Every chapter has sections of that premise that need to be proven to people. So they provide evidence, right? And so this is kind of the beauty of this structure, is that if you understand just the simple basics of it, you can expand it as large as you want. And people do. People write entire books that are an argument. They're trying to prove something, right? Or it can be as simple as, I think you should have a cat as a pet, right? But it all kind of works the same, right? It all builds out the same, right? What about this one here? When Joseph takes the bus, he is always late. And today, he's taking the bus, so I'm sure he's going to be late. What are we being asked, to believe here?
So if we take the bus, he will late.
Close, but not quite.
So he's going to be late?
When?
Today.
Today. Today. Yes, Joseph is going to be late today. Why should we believe that?
Because he takes bus,
He's always late when he's on the bus. And today, where is he? He is on the bus, right? Therefore, he is going to be late today, Joseph. Again, God, that guy. So, good, right? What about this one? This example is getting a little dated because, streaming platforms, and there's all kinds of great stuff that's gone straight to streaming, but think a few years ago. Wow, this movie is on iTunes, but it was never shown in theaters pre-COVID. It's not a good sign when a movie goes straight to iTunes without ever being shown in theaters. It must be pretty bad. What are we being asked to believe here?
movie's not good.
Movie is,
That's why
yeah.
it's on the iTunes.
iTunes have worse movies.
True. So the movie is bad, right? This is a bad movie, not good. Why should we believe that this is a bad movie? Because
The bad movies are always on the iTunes.
bad movies always go directly to iTunes. And what?
It's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's not a good sign when they go right to iTunes.
And it was never shown on theater.
It was never shown in theaters. And when a movie does those two things,
It is pretty bad.
usually that's a bad movie, right? Therefore, this movie,
That's bad.
pew, right? Bad movie. Yeah, very good. What about this one? This is actually just true on its own, but nobody should buy a beer brewed in the United States.
Oh my god, that example.
Yeah. Old Guzzler beer is brewed in the United States, so no one should buy it. This one might be a little trickier, but what are we being asked to believe?
So beer brewers and the old guzzlers are not bought by in the United States. So both the beers are not bought by the United States. Is it this?
Nope. I think you lost me there. Marco, what did you say?
It says that beers that are brewed in the United States are usually bad.
Beers that are brewed in the United States are bad. That is true, but I don't think it's the conclusion.
No one should buy old Guzzler beer.
You should not buy Old Guzzler beer. Okay, why should we believe that? Why should we not buy this Old Guzzler beer?
Because it's brewed in the United States.
It's brewed in the United States and
And the beer brewed in United States are not.
yeah, nobody should buy beer from the United States, which is true, by the way. So I assume none of you are beer drinkers, but if you are, the U.S. doesn't know what they're doing. Look at Belgium, Germany, or Holland. Much better beers. And some of the ones around here are really good too, but the U.S. they don't know. So we should not buy Old Guzzler beer. Why not? Because it is brewed in the United States, and you shouldn't buy beer that is brewed in the United States, right? Okay, have a look at this. Nope, don't have a look at this because that's the only example I have. Here's what I'd like you to do. Talk to the person beside you. Well, take about 30 seconds or so. Then talk to the person beside you and see if you can come up with your own very simple argument, okay? Maybe 2 premises and a conclusion. Can be about anything, I don't care. Pets, food, sports, politics, music, school, whatever. Fashion, whatever you want, okay? I'm going to put some time on the clock. Come up with an argument if you can, okay? What's that? So, mister. You've done this before, Maya. You should be an expert.
Forgot.
Mhm.
It was so long ago.
It was long
But
ago.
I remember that statement
Do you?
about the beer because Ruba and you had an argument.
Did we?
I think so.
What
About
were
you and beer.
about US? Oh, okay. Well, it's a matter of taste, I suppose. She has a different beer palate than I do. Yes. What's that? What about the quiz?
He's asking about the results of the.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna give it back to you in the second half of class.
Are you gonna give me my quiz one results?
Unless you want to make an argument for why I should give it back to you right now. That would be an argument. Oh shoot, I didn't put the timer up. 2 minutes. Got one?
That was a close one.
Yeah.
Really have no argument.
You have no arguments? You're just
I have a quiz today and also I have like 2 midterms coming up on Friday. Like,
trying to save brain power. Is that what you're doing? I don't think it works that way. I don't think you have a. It's not like a gas tank. I think you can. Okay. 1 more minute. 1 more minute. Okay. So would anyone like to volunteer their arguments for us to tear apart? No. Who's got an argument for me? Come on, I gave you mine. Got an argument for me? That's okay. None of those are very good.
in Germany break down often.
Ah.
Therefore, no one should buy a BMW.
Okay. So here is the argument, people. Okay, the argument is no one should buy a BMW. Okay, I can imagine some people are already saying no, that's wrong, but it's okay. Nobody should buy a BMW. Why should we believe that?
Cars manufactured in Germany break down often.
Okay, cars that are manufactured in Germany break down often. Okay, is that the only premise you have? Okay, can we suggest another premise to help this argument out? Remember, the conclusion is nobody should buy a BMW. Why should we believe that? Yeah.
It only runs on premium gas.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
Its parts are expensive.
The what? The parts are expensive? Yeah. Okay. Okay, hang on.
We don't have money.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So this argument is getting stronger by the second here. So you should not buy a BMW, right? Why should we believe that? Well, cars that are manufactured in Germany break down often. They are expensive cars to purchase. Their parts are more expensive if they break down. And they use premium gas, which is also more expensive, right? So that's not a bad argument. Now, are those all logical reasons why someone might not buy a BMW? I think they are, right? You might not buy one if you think they break down all the time, or if they're if they're really expensive to run and buy and maintain, and you don't have any money, right? That might be good. Are they all true? Are BMWs expensive?
Yes.
Do they use premium fuel?
Yes.
Is premium fuel expensive?
Yes.
Are the parts expensive?
Yes.
I assume they are. If the car is expensive, parts are expensive too. Do cars manufactured in Germany break down a lot?
Probably. I don't know.
We might need you to prove that one, right? Which is okay, right? Because some premises are kind of intuitively true, right? When I say that you should have a cat as a pet because you don't have to take them out, they go in a litter box, we kind of all know that to be true, right? You don't even have to be a cat owner. People know that, yeah, cats use litter boxes, right? I don't have to prove to you that that's the case. We all just kind of know that it's true. But do German cars break down more often? Maybe. I don't really know, right? And so I would say to Kind, well, you need to provide me with some data, right?
Or go get a BMW right now.
Well, or you could just Google it. But she'd have to find me some data, right? Just to help prove that premise. Because again, some of them are easily understood as true, but some of them, like, I don't know. You might be right, but maybe I don't know, right? So I need more information. But if that's true, if that premise is true, is this a good argument? Yeah, right? They all logically support the conclusion, and they're all true, and Kind would look up the data to prove that first one, right? Fantastic. Give me another one. Yeah, what do you got?
Everyone should take Anthropology 110.
Oh boy, I know where this is going. Before you commence your argument, keep in mind that I cannot be bribed. So I appreciate your kind words, but that's all they'll be. But please continue. Everyone should take Anthropology 110. Why should we believe that? Because I am the teacher. Okay, we need to have more than that.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Everyone who agrees show hands. Hath khade kar do, you know I agree.
Okay. So everybody should take Anthropology 110 because I am the, why should we believe that? Because I am the teacher.
Yeah.
Because 40% of the people who are already taking it agree.
And
It's kind of
one more thing,
pretty so-so.
teaching method is interesting as compared to only class.
Oh, So teaching method is interesting.
That's
This
true.
class nowadays seems as compared to another classes, most of the students are lying their hands on their tables.
Okay.
A lot of homo.
Okay. I think this one's becoming more questionable by the second. The BMW one was getting stronger, and this one's just
You can learn about primates and a lot of things.
you can.
And second more, recorded lectures as well.
Oh, and there's the lectures are recorded. Okay. All right. So this is a reasonable argument to make, right? Why should you take this class? Well, because I'm the teacher. The teaching method is interesting. You get to learn about our primate ancestors, and all the material is available for you online. Are those all true?
Yes.
Are they all reasons why someone might take this class?
Yes.
Great, right? There we go. There we go. A logical, sound argument. Give me just one more.
One more?
One more argument.
Every day we remember the sun rose in the morning. Therefore, it will rise in tomorrow morning. It's a universal truth.
Okay, so you're asking me to believe the sun will rise tomorrow morning?
Yes.
Why should I believe that?
Because it's from the past experience that every time the sun will rise.
Okay.
The sun is revolving on its axis.
So the sun has risen on Earth every day for the last few billion years. Therefore, it is highly likely that the sun will rise again tomorrow morning. Okay. I think that's kind of all the proof we need, isn't it? And we understand how
The earth is revolving around the sun.
the Earth is kind of revolving around the sun, so we know that it's going to come up, right? And the Earth is rotating. We know how that's going to work, right? So we understand what sunrises are. We know how they work. It's happened every day for the past several billion years, and therefore it's logical that the sun will rise tomorrow. Okay, I'm all right with that. Now the real test. Well, it's not a test, but the real test is our question, right? Our question is, if people were so successful as hunter-gatherers for hundreds of thousands of years, why, about 12,000 years ago, did they switch to farming? Some of them, okay? And switch to farming, they did, okay? The first farmers show up in these areas of the world here, not all at the same time, okay? You can see there Southeast Asia, Central Africa, the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and a couple places in North and South and Central America. People began to grow their own food, again, at different times. They start around maybe 12,000 years ago, give or take, in Mesopotamia, which is now the Middle East, and Egypt. But other places kind of follow a little bit later. You should see this not as Egypt and Mesopotamia started farming, so they taught the people in Asia to do it, who then taught the people in New Guinea. Didn't work that way. People started to do it in their own time, on their own. Okay, so it's not an idea that was transmitted from place to place. It's something that people kind of did on their own wherever they were. Okay.
It's more nutritious.
Well, we'll see, my dear. We will see. So, why is this a difficult question to answer? Well, for one thing, the archaeological record is very limited with the transition to agriculture, right? So we said that prior to this time, there's maybe about 5 to 8 million people on the entire planet. That's not many people, right? They would have been very spread out. The other thing is that the people who started farming would have started farming very simply at first. It would have been very difficult to tell when people were beginning to farm. Only later would it become more evident.
So these were Homo sapiens.
These are Homo sapiens. Yes. Yes. The other thing is that there's no written records, okay? So writing is associated with farming civilizations, but it only comes later, okay? The earliest writing is probably from about 6,000 years ago, maybe, give or take. And many societies actually never write anything down at all. So We don't have any written records. We have very little archaeological evidence. We have some. And so it's a difficult question to answer. And so to try to answer this question, I would like you to read this article with me, okay? It's an article by Jared Diamond. Jared is a historian, anthropologist. I think he's also a medical doctor too. He's had a lot of jobs in his life. He's written a number of books that have been very popular on the bestsellers lists and things like that. And he's also written this article here, The Worst Mistake in the History of the Human Race. Pretty dramatic title. In this article, he's going to talk about why he thinks people switch to agriculture. Now, I have a few questions to ask you. This is my question basically. Find the argument in this. Oh no, wait, hang on. I think I've got questions at the end of the article. Let me just double check. Sorry. Yes, I have questions at the end of the article that I would like you to answer, okay? And so let me just put them on the screen just so you can see them here. There it is. So, the first question is this. What is the progressivist theory on why foragers turned to agriculture? Yeah, so as a heads up, this article kind of contains two arguments. Okay? Article contains two arguments. So what Jared Diamond is going to do in this article is he's going to say, here's what people used to say, right? These progressivists. They said that people switched to agriculture for this reason. But me, Jared Diamond, I don't think that's right. I think this is why they did it. So there's two arguments in here, and he's going to be saying, people said this before, but I think that's junk, right? I think this is the reason why they did it. Okay, so you're going to have to be on your guard. There'll be two arguments in here. Jared Diamond's going to have one of them, and these progressivists are going to have another one, okay? So I want you to find the progressivist theory of agriculture. Actually, let's just make that first question, what are the two arguments, okay? What is Jared Diamond arguing, and what is, actually, let's just leave these questions out, okay? I'll ask you as we go through. Forget about the questions. I just want the two arguments. What are the progressivists saying, and what is Jared Diamond saying? And then we'll talk a little bit about not only the what, but the why, okay? Is that okay? Does that make some sense? It's all right? Okay. If, while you're reading, if you come across a word that you don't understand, of course, Google it. If you encounter like an analogy or something he's saying that you don't understand, also let me know and I'll help you out with it, okay? So I'll let you read for maybe about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll take a break and then we'll come back, okay? So we should be able to take a crack at it. It is posted on Moodle, so you can read it there, okay? Is that all right? Everybody good? Awesome. Okay. Okay, people, I know you're all smart cookies, but I'm near positive you can't have a conversation and read at the same time. So read first, talk later, okay? What's what? Where is it?
In particular, recent discoveries suggest that the adoption of agriculture technologies are more
Mm.
decisive factor. It's a better word.
Decisive.
Decisive.
Yeah, so it's like clear, like a clear decision.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all. Always ask. That's a paleopathologist. So that's someone who studies disease in the past. Paleo is old, and pathology, pathos, I think, is sickness. Yeah, I think.
Can you come grab a mask? A mask.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, we keep.
It's okay. Okay, good people, would you like to take a little break? Okay, take a little break, come back, we'll finish reading this, and then we'll talk about it, okay? Ready to get back to work? Okay. If I could, very quickly, two very quick questions. First one, what page are you on right now? 5? 5? Okay, that's good. So I'll ask you the second question at the end. Okay, I'll give you just a few more minutes, and then we'll talk. Okay? Maybe like 7. Okay. Time to read, people. Okay, people, are we okay to talk about this? No? Yes? Maybe? Okay, so just as a quick, this is the question I want to ask you before. On a scale of 1 to 10, how easy or difficult of a read was this? So 1 being, oh my gosh, this is just so easy. And actually, no. 1 being, oh my God, this is really hard. I can barely understand this. To 10, this is so easy to read. Where is it? 5, 8, 7. Guys, where are you? 6. Okay. Not bad. 700. You read it backwards and it still made sense? Okay. All right, that's not bad. That's not bad. I don't mind if it's a little bit challenging for us. That's good, but as long as it's not ridiculously difficult, then I'm happy with that. Let's try to flesh out some of these arguments, okay? So, as I mentioned, there's 2 arguments here. One of them is the progressivist argument. One of them is Jared Diamond's. Which one do you want to start with? Doesn't matter? First one? Okay, let's start with the progressivist argument. So what's the kind of conclusion here? What's the one thing that they want us to believe? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So the progressivists said that of course people switched to farming because it improved our lives in many ways. Okay. So the question, of course, we always need to ask ourselves is, really? Why should we believe that? Why should we believe that it enriched or that it improved our lives? What's one premise? How did it improve our lives?
More food for less food.
The progressivists said, well, of course, because you get more food for less work. Farming is, all you have to do is, you tend your crops a little bit, and then you've got a whole field full of food, right?
If you compare the population is more of farming compared to the hunting.
Right. So farming can feed far more people per square kilometer, I guess, than hunting and gathering can. You can feed more people. That is true. What else do they say?
You also believe that food can be stored for a longer period of time.
Right. So there's this benefit of food being stored, right? Hunter-gatherers always have to look for their next meal because they don't store any food. But farmers dry out their grain and store it away. You could have a full year of food, in your storage facility if you want, right? Great stuff. What else?
The time
What's that?
time.
Okay.
Have leisure time, good sleep.
Right. So people had far more free time, and of course that had enabled them to build the Parthenon and do all kinds of great works of art because they weren't so busy tending to or hunting or gathering, right? Anything else? You guys are nailing this. Very impressive. Very impressive. Anything else the progressivists say? Yeah?
They said that it provided more variety from the farmers.
And
Well, I think they said the opposite. I think they said that there was less.
they get more energy by oil and machine, not by doing the sweat.
Right. But that kind of comes later, right? But certainly today, yeah, we use many more machines and we don't have to kind of work physically as hard as we used to, right? But I'll caution you right now, and maybe I should have cautioned you earlier, but when we're talking about farmers, keep in mind we're talking about the first farmers, right? We're not talking about us now, because farming is still a lot of work now, but we do have all those machines, right? We have combines and we have tractors and trucks and storage facilities and refrigerators and preservatives and all kinds of things, right? So yeah, we have a lot of innovations that help us to farm today, but of course, people didn't have those 10,000 years ago, right? That's a different story. So that's all good, right? I think we've done a good job. The progressivists argue, yes, of course people switched to agriculture. It was the better choice. It improved our lives, right? There was more food for less work. We could store it away for a rainy day, if you will. We had more leisure time, and yeah, that's what we said. Yeah.
They said that the hunter-gatherers
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not sure how that fits into our. Well, does that fit into our argument? Well, I guess part of their.
They meant that farming was more civilized.
In a way, yeah. People used to think of our hunter-gatherer past, and they literally said this, as nasty, brutish, and short, right? So people lived awful, difficult, brutish lives, and then they died early. That was hunting and gathering. Awful, right? Yeah, so that's the progressivist argument. But of course, Jared Diamond says, I don't believe that. I think I have a better argument. What's his argument? What's the conclusion of his argument? What is it?
Like he didn't say that the hunters are not actually the bad. They have the inner food as compared to the farming people.
Right. So part of his argument is going to be the idea that being a hunter-gatherer actually wasn't that bad, right? It wasn't nasty, brutish, and short at all, right? It was actually not a bad way to live. But what's the main thing he wants us to believe?
Farming is the worst thing because it brought inequality.
Right. Okay, so farming is the worst mistake, right? Farming has not been a step forward, right? It's not progress. It's actually been a huge mistake for humanity. Quite a bold statement, isn't it? Why should we believe that, Jared?
Because it brought inequality.
Okay, what kind of inequality?
But he speaks something about inequality.
Okay, so there's I think those are two premises right there. Okay, so one of the reasons why switching to agriculture was a mistake, well, it brought about social inequality, right? It also brought about sexual inequality, right, between men and women. Good. And I think there's one more premise. It's a big one. It's got a lot of stuff in it, but it's one more. And what is it?
Negative effect on health.
Yeah, negative effect on health, right? So the progressivists are saying, of course people switch to agriculture. It improves our lives in many ways. And Jared Diamond is saying, actually, agriculture was a big mistake because it actually made our lives worse in a lot of ways, right? Health, social inequality, sexual inequality, right? What's some of the data that Jared Diamond uses to, yes?
Life expectancy dropped from 23 to 19.
Right. So that's part of the health piece, and that's the question I was just going to ask is, what data does he use to support this idea that our health was negatively affected? Yeah, one sec. So the idea that people's life expectancy dropped from, did you say 26 to 19? 23 to 19, wow. Now that sounds pretty grim all around, right? Because that would mean that, all of you are just about to die, and I'm an incredibly old man thousands of years ago. But keep in mind that's not really the way it is, right? Because at this time in history, lots and lots of children die in childbirth, and lots of children die before the age of 2. Infant mortality is quite high. There's no medicines really. There's no sterilization. There's no antiseptic. If something goes wrong during a birth, you can't do anything about it really. And so lots of kids die, and so it pulls the average way, way down. So even if the average life expectancy is 26, it doesn't mean there's no 30-year-olds, right? It just means that a lot of kids are dying early and it's pulling the average down, right? But yeah, exactly, right? Medicine was very basic, just roots and herbs and things like that. And so giving birth to a child is a dangerous process, and without proper medicine, sometimes it doesn't turn out well, right? But still life expectancies decreased, right? From, because he has these two sites where we have people living in the same part of the world, but at lower levels in the archaeological dig, they're living a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. And then a few thousand years later, the same people are living a farming lifestyle, right? So we can compare the skeletons between the two and say, okay, how have these people changed over a few thousand years from when they hunted and gathered to when they started to farm, right? And life expectancy is one of those things that went down, right? Oh, Harnadeep, what were you going to say? There's malnutrition. How did they know about malnutrition? Oh, right.
It was earlier for the hunter it's 5'9" and for women it's 5'5".
Yeah.
But for the one that when they consume farming, it's 5'3" for men and
Yeah.
5 for women.
Yeah. So those farming communities were really short on average, right? And of course your height has to do with your genetics, right? But it also has to do with your amount of nutrition when you're young. If you get all of your nutrition, you'll grow to your genetically determined height. If you don't, you're going to be shorter, right? And that's a big difference, right? That's a huge difference. 5'9", an average of 5'9" for men and 5'6" for women. 5'5". That's about what it is now in Canada. So that's where we are. That's how tall Canadians are on average, more or less. But 5 feet is quite a bit shorter, right? Those people aren't getting the same kind of nutrition they were getting as hunter-gatherers. What else? The health.
Also, called the bones.
Yeah.
Absorb the bones of them.
There was the iron deficiency, and there was degenerative conditions of bones and spines.
Anemia.
Lot of
Yeah.
physical work.
Yeah. Good. Let me show you some pictures of what this looks like, okay?
Right.
Okay. Here's one of the things that Jared Diamond is talking about, okay? So what you're looking at is the teeth from a human skeleton, and it's this part, well, you can't see because I got a mask on. It's the top teeth here. So this tooth here is the one right in the middle, and then it goes further to the molars in the back. Now, what I'd like you to notice here is these little lines. See those little grooves? Yeah. What's happened here, you can see it in the back too. What's happened here is that when this person's adult teeth, and when your adult teeth are kind of growing when you're a child, you have your baby teeth, and then your adult teeth are growing in your gums. And basically what your body is doing is forming a mineral. It's like forming a rock inside your mouth. But if you enter a period in childhood where there's not enough food, where you're malnourished, or where you kind of start to starve a little bit, your body will try to conserve energy and it will stop that process. It'll stop forming the enamel on your teeth. And then when the food supply comes back, then your body will start building it again. But what you get is a little gap in the enamel, right? So the enamel's forming, stops, and then it starts forming again. And so the number of times that this person has periods of severe famine or severe malnutrition, you get more lines. And some of them are quite deep, and they're like a little brrrr. They're really prominent. And again, as you probably know, once your enamel forms, that's it, right? You don't get any more. And so you can always see these little ridges. And so you often see these with farmers, but you don't often see it with hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers tend to have really, really good teeth. if you find their bones. Farmers, for a number of reasons, tend not to. This is one reason. They tend to have what you call here is enamel hypoplasia. You don't have to remember that, but that's what it is. You'll also find that because farmers eat so much starchy food and plaque feeds off starch, you'll also see that that farmers have way more cavities than hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers tend to have really good teeth and very few cavities, even though they don't really have toothbrushes or toothpaste. Farmers, they get a lot of cavities, right? Because that starch from the flour and the bread, that eats your teeth. And they don't have toothbrushes either, right? So they tend to have lots of cavities, lots of missing teeth, and they tend to have teeth that are very worn. Because if you've got a bunch of grain, if you've got a bunch of wheat, do you just eat the wheat? No, right? You grind it into flour. And so these people were using stones, but of course, while they were grinding their flour, they were also grinding the rock, right? And so all of their bread had a very fine sand in it. So as they were eating their bread, it's slowly wearing their teeth down. So early farmers tend to have terrible teeth, right? Enamel hypoplasia, cavities, pretty heavy teeth wear, but you don't see that with hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers have great teeth, usually. Here's something going on that is not normal. This is an iron deficiency, okay? So this is parodic hyperostosis. Now, some of you might be low iron in here, and this is not what your skull looks like. It has to be a severe case. But if your body's running out of a certain mineral and it needs it, or if it needs iron, it will start to pull it from the tissues that you already have, right? And so here, this is a part of a human skull. And so you're looking at the left side, kind of like in the middle on the top a little bit. So you can see this here is a little kind of suture that runs across here. And then across the top, there's one that goes all the way back. And so you're seeing here the side, is that correct?
Looks like sponge.
Yeah. It's all holy, right? And not like, holy, but it's full of little holes. And you can find these in a bunch of different places on the body where, again, the body's running out of iron. It desperately needs iron, and it's going to start pulling it out of your tissues if you can't get any from your food. So you'll see this with farming communities. Here's kind of the same thing happening. This is when it's here, they call it cribra orbitalia, but you don't need to know that either. And this is the inside of your eye socket, right? The left eye socket. And up here, you can see it's all bubbly and holy, but it really should be smooth, okay? That bone should be nice and smooth. But instead, it's all full of holes, right? Again, it doesn't hurt, doesn't feel like anything, but your body is trying to stay alive by pulling from what it already has, right? It's pulling stuff out of your bone to keep you alive. Here's some evidence of disease, okay? So here's a series of vertebrae here. So if this is your back, these are probably the lower vertebrae, so the last ones kind of right down there. These ones here are a little higher up, so they're probably from your mid back. And it should not look like this, okay? So the side of these vertebrae should look more like this. They're a little bit rough. They're not perfectly smooth. So here and here, that looks normal. But all the holes certainly do not, okay? And so sometimes what's happening when you see that is the body is trying to recover nutrients. Sometimes what you can see is there's actually infections going on and stuff is draining out through the bones. And so it can be pretty awful stuff. And you have to be sick for a long time to be like this, right? What's that? The what? These tuberculosis. Yeah, so if you have long-term severe tuberculosis, it will start to remodel your bones like this. But you have to have it for like years. So lots of diseases people get, and then they're over them and it's fine, or they get a disease and they die really quick. That doesn't remodel your bones. You actually have to be pretty seriously ill for quite some time, right? And then you'll see bone remodeling like this and like this and like this. Okay. So yeah, we see that in farming communities, and it tells us that they're having trouble feeding themselves. They're going through periods of malnutrition, or they're iron deficient, or they're deficient in other vitamins or minerals, or they have kind of severe, kind of long-term diseases, right, that spread through civilization. Yeah, and so we don't see these things, we don't see these kind of diseases with hunter-gatherers, and we don't see them because, as Jared Diamond mentions, these are diseases of civilization. They're from people crowding together and living together in one place, right? I know we probably take it for granted nowadays, but a flushable toilet is a wonderful invention, right? Because it takes all that nasty stuff and it's gone, right? And we never have to see it again. It's carried far away and treated, and it's good, right? But in a farming community, people are just going in the ground, right? And that stuff is getting into people's drinking water, into their well water. They're spreading diseases that way. And so stuff like this spreads around really quickly, right? People living in smaller groups with bad sanitation, it's not a good sign, or it's not a good scene. Hunter-gatherers, doesn't happen, right? They live in small groups. Who are they going to get sick from? And, you know, if they go in the woods, they go and then they keep walking, right? And they never come back there. So they don't kind of generate the same kind of diseases, and they live in such small groups, they really can't transmit it to anyone either. And so they tend to be healthier in terms of their nutrition, and we see it in their teeth and their bones. They tend to be healthier in terms of disease. All around, hunter-gatherers tend to be healthier. And this is the last thing I'll say because we're going to run out of time, but when you think of hunter-gatherers from thousands of years ago, I want you to think about Olympic athletes, okay? Because that's who you're dealing with, right? They're not small, they're not frail, they're not, like the progressivists thought, they're not, starving every day. Where can I find food? That's not who they are, right? They're very good at finding food, like the Hadza. They're very in shape, they're very active. Think Olympic athletes, because they're super healthy. Early farmers, not so much. Okay. What I would like to do is, because I promised, I'll give you your quiz back today, but because we're out of time, I'll review it on Friday. Is that okay? Okay. I kind of wanted to get this underway, and I meant to leave a little more time at the end, but I failed. So I will hand you back your quizzes, then you can go, and then we'll review it first thing on Friday. Okay? Yeah.